Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Dave Tree.
That's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to Making Tracks. I'm your co-host, Mark Newbold, and joining me, as always, on the show is Intro, please. Intro.
It's Dave. Hope you're good and you've been keeping busy. We have had a belter of a couple of weeks. If you've not been following the site, Fantha Tracks has been incredibly busy. But before we do anything else, I just want to have a word from our sponsors, Nestle Still Life Water. It's water for all ages. It's lip-smackingly good. How's the weather with you, Mark?
Pleasingly wet. Which encompasses both the water and the weather. It's not too bad. I'm glad we've gotten to the topic of weather already, because it would feel weird if we didn't.
Oh, I'm just going through the checklist quick.
Oh yeah,
boom, 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 boom.
No, best way, totally best way. Weather is not bad. Slightly overcast. Expecting a warm. Why the hell are we talking about this? It's very nice. It's October, so you can't grumble. Whatever we get is good. Any kind of weather is good, and it's always worth talking about. And the water is amazingly refreshing as well. Still not actually paid us for the sponsorship. I can't believe all this free advertising they're getting.
I know, it's crazy. I'm sure the check's in the post.
The check is always in the post.
Exactly. It's been a crazy couple of weeks, but for those that don't know, what's been going on, Mark?
So anybody that follows the site or follows the YouTube or follows the social media or indeed the podcast will know that a bunch of us were over in New York for New York Comic Con. So New York Comic Con happened last weekend. It was a bonkers, nutty, fantastically busy weekend, as it always is. Loads of content, as you say, went on the site. Big shout out to Richard Hutchinson and the rest of the Fantha Tracks team for keeping the site ticking over. They did a great job. Loads going on. We went to panels. We all managed to have a little cool moment of our own at the show. For example, Martin Keeler got a Zuvio shout out from Steve Evans, one of the designers at Hasbro, which was very funny. Totally Star Wars unrelated, but I managed to interview all the cast of Star Trek Discovery for the official Trek magazine, so I was buzzing about that. So that was really cool. Everybody had a cool little moment. Brian, believe it or not, this actually happened. Brian had a hug and a fist bump from Mark Ruffalo because they actually worked together on Avengers Infinity War, and Ruffalo recognised him, which again was insanely cool.
Wow,
and Matt,
that's really cool.
Yeah, it was. And and of course he also works for WWE, so there was a little moment where all these things were happening at once, and he came back like
I was going to say like Mark Ruffalo like pile drived him into the ground or something like.
I've never, honest to God, never seen Brian so excited. He didn't know where to put himself. It was the funniest moment of the whole weekend. But no, it was really good. We got, like I say, got loads of good coverage. There's still bits and bobs coming on the site from New York Comic Con.
Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith, Star Wars fan, Fantha Tracks fan.
You went on holiday. Tell us a little bit about where you went, because you had a right adventure.
Yeah, so I had kept the last 2 weeks of September, first 2 weeks of October free. You know, at the start of the year, we said, right, we're going to try and do something, aim for this. And I was very fortunate to head over to Canada to stay with a friend of mine, Shane Turgeon, who is the author of The Force in the Flesh, which is a book all about Star Wars tattoos. And he's done 2 of them. So if you've not picked them up, check them out. Absolutely fantastic. And he's worked on other projects. If you go to Celebration, you'll recognize Shane from the Tattoo Pavilion. So he's all very closely connected to that, although he's not one of the tattoo artists directly himself, but he is very much part of that world. Now, Shane said, look, if you can come out, that'd be great, and I'll take you around the Rockies. And Shane is a huge photography enthusiast. So we went to the most insane places to take pictures of landscape and of wildlife and all kinds of crazy stuff. It was snowing, where we do like to touch on the weather on every episode. But out there, it was snowing. There was no autumn. It just went from summer straight into winter. Not characteristic. It was pretty much, by all accounts of talking to everybody, it was a good 6 weeks early. But by the time we came to come home, it came with a vengeance, to the point where Chloe and I got caught in a snowdrift for 18 hours with no rescue, which
Ouch.
is pretty mental to say the least, because you couldn't go forward, you couldn't go back. And to kind of put it into kind of some kind of perspective, it was on the Trans-Canada Highway, which is a big motorway highway that goes all the way through Canada. You know, it's not like some back road. We're on the main
It's
road.
like the M6, a big main drag.
Yeah, and it got cut off going east and westbound. We were stranded. To do a 90-minute trip took 18 hours. We knew it was going to, you know, we spoke to like information bureaus and stuff like that to say, you know, do we need to allow for extra time? And they said, oh, just double your time. So we allowed 3 hours to do the trip, but we came to a stop. It was like stop, start for a couple of hours, and then nothing. We were stationary, and after 6 hours of being stationary, it starts getting dark. And yeah, we've missed our flight. We've got no food. We got no water. We got no blankets. It's -10 outside with the wind chill. You're calling 911 and they're just saying, stay, don't leave your vehicle. If you have to leave your vehicle to go take a Jimmy Riddle or something equivalent, do it next to your vehicle. Don't wander off because it's dangerous in the blizzard and the snow drifts. It's dark and there's bears as well. So yeah,
Hot situation.
it was. We're not the only ones there. It's like the main highway. There was probably all told 1,000 people stuck, but you can do anything. I'm messaging Shane saying, you know, we've not seen any police, we've not seen any snowplows, we've not seen any highway patrols or anything like that. And he said, it'll be because they just can't get to you.
Yeah.
And you are then thinking, oh.
Oh no. No, am I right in hearing loads of planes were downed, but your plane was one of the ones that took off?
Yeah. So we flew by WestJet, but all of Air Canada cancelled all their flights. And again, to kind of explain, they had record-breaking snowfall for one day. Not the all-time record, but certainly the highest for October. They had 40 centimetres in one day, which was in addition to what was already down. So Air Canada cancelled all flights out of Calgary. WestJet were cancelling flights and delaying flights, but ours was one of the few flights to get back to the UK. But credit where credit's due, WestJet couldn't have been more accommodating because they just went, look, because we were like, we're really stuck. We just don't know what's happening. But they said, look, this is unprecedented situation. Literally, don't worry about it. Get here when you can and we'll take care of the rest. And they did. They got us back as quick as they could and were very accommodating, you know, where it was incredibly stressful and actually genuinely quite worrying because we had a full tank of gas. Once it got to half a tank, I'm like turning to Chloe and say, I've got to switch off the engine because we're going to have to start conserving fuel because at this point, it's been about 12 hours or whatever. We unpacked everything from the suitcases, you know, we were like layered up with like stuff on top of us. You know, you just sat in the car. We can only really turn it on just to quickly warm up again because it was genuinely worrying. And when we did start moving at about 4 a.m, a snowplow broke through coming west, but for the eastbound traffic, we passed so many vehicles that were abandoned, even a coach. You know, I have no idea how they got everybody off and relocated, but there was just vehicles abandoned everywhere because they just run out of fuel because they've been stuck there for so long. It was a bit of an ordeal. It's a great story now, but like at that point in time, to be stuck in a car for 18 hours is exhausting.
So there's me all smug that I've just been to New York to Comic-Con and you come back from Canada with the best story ever.
No.
A sort of a Bear Grylls level tale of survival in the wild.
This was all like the parks up there. So we went through Jasper, David Thompson, right down to Banff and then, and Edmonton. So we did the Edmonton show, which is the show that Shane originally helped set up. We just did this giant loop. It was very much not a relaxing holiday because we were like hiking up mountains and doing all sorts, and Shane would take us to like incredible locations that would involve you kind of abseiling down like valley sides, you know, with a bit of rope, and you're thinking, what am I doing? Like sort of semi-conscious that you got someone's carrying bear spray with them and stuff like that.
You might have been fighting off wild bears. I had to share a taxi with Matt and Brian, so I think I can trump you on that one.
But that is so cool that you guys did that. Watching the coverage was just phenomenal. It was so cool to see everything there and all the other Fantha Track members as well. So Martin and Paul McHugh as well, and Big Kev, really cool to see everybody there all together as a team hitting that show in such a big way.
I think we did a pretty good job. We've done big shows before over the years. First time we've really done a big show as Fantha Tracks, and it's given us a lot of enthusiasm and optimism for Chicago as well for Celebration next year. So yes, I think we did a pretty good job, and like I say, there's more content to come. Not a huge amount. We've pretty much got all of it out there. I know Booker was purging his phone of galleries and galleries of pictures, so stuff's out there for the most part. But now that New York Comic Con is in the rearview mirror, we, as in you and me, had the opportunity to have a chat with Steve Sansweet about the upcoming Rancho Obi-Wan gala. Also, just about the general state of Star Wars at the moment. We had a good long old chat. But here's me and that's you, Dave, talking to Steve Sansweet. We've got the gala coming up. The gala is on the 20th, am I right?
Yes.
So to give us a little bit of info, what is the theme of the gala this year, if there is one, and what's planned?
There's no particular theme except Revenge of the Gala. The Gala Strikes Back. We use those interchangeably, and lots of stuff's going on. We've limited it this year. We had a little too many people last year, so we limited it this year to 180 people, including volunteers, and Mark knows the size of Rancho Obi-Wan. That's a lot of people, but we've got tents, and we've got our Jabba's Palace all set up to do food and wine tastings and things of that nature. So it's a chance to get together with fellow Star Wars fans and support Rancho Obi-Wan. It's our once a year annual gala. It's an important fundraiser for us. We put a lot into it and we get something out of it. Ann Newman really is the vice president of Rancho Obi-Wan and curator of the museum and chief cook and bottle washer, and everything else has been putting in just hundreds of hours in the last couple of months as everything comes in for the gala, as we make plans for food, drink, events, guests. It's a busy time of year for us.
Last year you had wine tasting, you had a poker tournament, which I know went down really, really well. The food's always amazing. Is there anything that you think will be the standout at this gala?
Well, we've got some amazing pieces for the auction. That's one of my favorite things to do because I run the auction. Except in this case, the auctioneer is also allowed to bid on things, so I get myself in trouble.
I was going to say, is that a tough one for you?
Yes, it's very tough. And there are things that I deliberately lose. I mean, I can see somebody wants something bad enough. I'm not going to bid them up just to bid them up. We've got original art from a bunch of people, including Sunea Sanda, and a piece just arrived yesterday from Brian Rood, magnificent watercolor Princess Leia, which we haven't even had a chance to post yet. And Sunea's piece is another wonderful Leia sketch, colored pencil on paper, called Forever Shining Smile. And Brian's is a watercolor, and in his watercolor style, it's just beautiful. He did a series of those for Topps a while ago, and this is one that was not used in the card set, so this is extra special.
Now, obviously, this gala will be the greatest gala ever. But if you
It always is, Mark. It always is.
But if you were to pick a great moment from galas past, what would you pick?
The very first gala was our grand reopening of Rancho Obi-Wan as a nonprofit museum, and that was in November of 2011. And cutting the ribbon, and my friend, the mayor of Star Wars Town, was here. Tom Schaefer, who's a fellow member of the 501st, but he has this wonderful Mr. Star Wars suit and has this state of mind known as Star Wars Town, of which I am the official ambassador. And so we cut the ribbon with the lightsaber, and that was a lot of fun. Each one of the galas has interesting things. We had last gala, we had Elliot Hansen and Mark Daniel, who do the warm-ups at Celebration and the music and everything. We're here. They'll be back again this year. We've had an interview with Don Post of Don Post Studios, the mask maker. We've had a lot of things that have really worked well. We're doing another wine tasting this year, Skywalker Vineyards wine, 4 different wines. And so that will be fun. We're doing the poker tournament the day before because we had to squeeze it in a little last year. So this time we're seeing how it will work the evening before. without the time constraints that we had from the gala. And lots of stuff in the silent auction, lots of stuff in the live auction, and the opportunity for members of Rancho Obi-Wan to actually bid on many of the items that are going to be up for auction. So we can go through some of those. The last couple of years, we've been able to give away a private wine tasting for 4 at Skywalker Vineyards at Skywalker Ranch. And that has been a big hit because you can't get onto Skywalker Ranch. This is a way to get on there, have this amazing in their new vineyard building. And they actually not only grow the grapes at Skywalker Ranch, but now they crush them and bottle them there too. And so it's an amazing operation to see. And you get to see the behind the scenes, and you get to see some of Skywalker Ranch.
That's a really amazing prize.
Yeah, it is. We've been blessed to be able to get that for the last couple of years. So we'll be doing that again for people who are here. And Funko has sent us a bunch of prototype first shot bobbleheads, which we'll be auctioning off. We have all 3 of the helmets from Nissan, including the Range Trooper, of which there were only 100 made, and the Execution Trooper, I believe there were only 100 of those made. And then the Death Trooper, if you bought a Nissan Rogue, then you could get that. This is a way to get it without buying the Nissan Rogue.
Now, you got a Rogue, didn't you? You got one.
I got a Rogue, yes. Our great friends at Nissan made it possible for both Ann and I to get Rogues. So we're driving our Nissan Rogues.
Enjoying it?
Very much so. I had a 2003 car, and so it was 160,000 miles on it. So it was nice to be able to get a new car. I didn't think I'd be getting one.
Did you two argue who'd be Rogue One and Rogue Two?
We did not. We're both Rogue One.
Well played. Well played.
Hers is white and mine is black. So she's the light side, not the dark side.
Oh, it all worked out then. It all worked out.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Gareth Edwards, director of the best standalone Star Wars film since Caravan of Courage, called Rogue One. You're listening to Panther Tracks. Enjoy.
A lot has gone on in Star Wars. We've had Solo.
Oh, my goodness. Every day, it seems.
Exactly. But what do you think of it? Apart from the sheer massive content that must be floating through your front gate, what do you think of all this new stuff that's coming? Are you enthused by it? What do you feel about it?
Well, I'm very pleased because everybody isn't going to love everything, but there's enough content out there for people to glom on to things that they really love. We have our new Star Wars Resistance, which is started off like a ball of fire. Looks like it's going to be a very promising series with an old buddy of mine. Athena Portillo is one of the executive producers of it. We have Dave Filoni, who's even now directing the first of the Mandalorian series, which we'll get to see in 2019 on the Disney streaming app that Jon Favreau has written and is exec producing. The books and the comics just keep pouring out at an incredible pace. There's new stories there. The content team has been working overtime, it seems to me. We've had Star Wars Stories with Jordan Hembrow narrating, and I've seen the first 2 of those, and they were great. Alvin Johnson and Robin, the doctor from New Jersey. And they have been really cool because it's all about what draws fans together. And I mean, that's why we're Star Wars fans. It's the community. It's the exciting content. To some degree, it's the stuff. And that may sound funny coming from me to say, to some degree, it's the stuff because I got a lot of it. But it is not the main factor. It's the friendships and the community. There have been some ups and downs in the last year. People have been very particular about certain movies and certain scenes and certain actors. We all just got to get along and like what you like. And as I said, there's plenty to choose from.
This up and down with fandom at the moment, with it being so divisive, what do you think of that, given that when you were back at Lucasfilm and being fan relations manager, it was very much a positive, upbeat thing, or at least public perception of it was. I'm sure you saw things that we didn't. But what do you feel of it now, given that it has been so rocky for the past few months?
Well, I think it's a little rocky. I think it's the people who are negative tend to get the most attention. But there's so many, as we all know, so many fans didn't like this. You know, the fans think that. Well, there's no universal fan. There are many fans with many feelings. Right now, the discourse on the internet as a whole tends to be, especially from the view of an American with American politics in such an uproar and upheaval, there tends to be so much negativity out there that it's disappointing. But I know that there are the vast number of fans, and I'm sure we will see this at Celebration in Chicago next April, the vast number of fans who are very happy. 60,000 people going to a convention from all over the world. I think that shows something. I think it shows something that, when we have 180 people coming from Norway and France and England and all over the place to come to our little gala, it shows that there's a core of fans and the majority of fans who are very excited, maybe not with every single thing that's come out, but with enough to keep their fandom alive and stoked and keep them happy.
What you just talked about there really encompasses the idea behind the gala and like the celebration. But I think like Star Wars Stories in particular is a bit of a stroke of genius at this point in time, because it's taking it away from the core story and looking at the people who are part of it. A lot of it is very inspirational, renews your enthusiasm for it in a way that you can relate to. So it's not a case of you can't actually look at any of those stories or what's coming up and go, no, I disagree with that, or that's rubbish, because each one is personal. But you can understand it and you can relate to it. And in all cases, it's a very much a positive message that comes across. I think that's kind of needed at this current time more than ever, because as you were saying, everything's so divisive. There's no debate anymore. There's no civilized discussion about it. It's at the extreme ends of the scale.
About everything.
It baffles me, because I sit there and I see some of this stuff, and being a toy retailer, you're engaging with some really, strong reactions, and you're just like thinking, why? Any other thing goes on in your life and there are worse things that happen. Either let it go, or you move on, or you just accept it. But like this has been almost like a sticking point. And I've mentioned this to Mark in the sense of social media just doesn't seem to let go of anything. So it's always renewing that reaction every time someone logs on. It's there waiting for you again, and it just never seems to die and move on. I find it a real shame.
Yeah, and I think we're not looking at the total context. It's, the vast number of people who don't tweet, don't get online, and don't take part in these conversations. They tend to become self-perpetuating in the negativity. It's the people who have negative feelings are the ones who tend to be the loudest, tend to want to continue the argument, which is, really silly. If you don't like something, and if you really don't like the whole thing, then leave it and let the people who enjoy it continue to enjoy it. Everything about every one of the recent movies is not my cup of tea. Every point, every scene. But, I still take and choose from what I love and still love it all. I don't have to be a mindless yes-sayer of everything that comes out. And that's one of the joys and one of the benefits to having so much that's come out and coming out, is the fact that there's so much to pick and choose from. Or love it all if you do. And there are many people who do.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's the bit that I find just crackers, in the sense that people don't seem to get that anymore. Even if you strip out what you've had Disney era, you don't seem this kind of angst with the prequels. And if you strip out the prequels, you don't see that anything like that associated to the Ewok movies.
Return of the Jedi was met with some opprobrium on behalf of some fans. And then there are other people who say that's the first movie I saw in the theater, and that's the one I love the most. It always impressed me when I was doing the early conventions for Lucasfilm, and I would see a show of hands as to which movie people like the most. And my assumption at that time was it may weigh a little heavier towards Empire Strikes Back, but all three movies would get hands raised. And I would ask people in particular about Return of the Jedi, and these were people of a certain age. And that was the first movie they saw on the big screen, often with their folks, and they had great memories of it and loved the movie. And, it's the same way there are people out there who saw Episode 1 as their first Star Wars movie, and that's what they say their favorite movie is.
How long have you known Steve, Dave? That makes no sense. How long have you known Steve Sansweet, Dave? You must have known him a good long while. I've known him since about 2005. Presumably you've known him for a bit longer than that.
No, it's only through my first involvement with Celebration Europe in 2007, really.
Yes. Greatest show ever.
Because it's where we met. Physically, face to face is where we met for the first time. I hadn't really interacted with Steve, I don't think, until that point, where I was like setting up for the Palatoy archive, which looked at all the UK toys that were released by the toy distributor Palatoy. I had to engage with Steve backwards and forwards with like conversations setting that up. And I'll be honest, then at Celebration Europe itself, it's one of those things, you're kind of like tethered to that. He's tethered to his duties as well. And I only got to see him very briefly when he came up to have a look around the exhibit itself. I didn't really get to properly talk to Steve really until the following year, which was at JediCon, which was a show that was done in Germany. That was a huge amount of fun because I did that with Gus, Duncan, Matthias Rendel, and the rest of the Swedish crew, which any fans of vintage collecting will know that they are legendary. And I had the misfortune of staying with the Swedish guys for that trip. It was pretty messy.
I remember when we rolled up at Essen for Celebration Europe 2 and all those Swedish guys
were shouting out the window.
Shouting out the windows. That was hilarious.
We were there in the cars, weren't we? And they were like literally in the hotel rooms up above, like shouting out abuse at me and stuff like that. A great crowd. But like Steve was there for JediCon, and where it was a slightly smaller show and you have a little bunch of you who are English speaking, you kind of all gravitate towards each other. So I got to talk more at length to Stephen at that show, and it was great. And then from there, shortly after I opened up the shop here, I did an Empire Strikes Back 30th anniversary exhibition, which again was all looking at stuff associated, produced back in that time period, and it was a nice little display. I really enjoyed doing that, but like Steve helped coordinate that and gave it a little bit of an official stroke unofficial thumbs up within what he was doing at Lucasfilm there, but he certainly helped out on that front. So yeah, where I've kind of like dipped in and out with various follies and projects that I cook up, Steve has been a great resource, as has a large part of my learning as well, from concept to screen to collectible. The first book I ever bought back in 94, I was blown away by it because I was going
to say you were quite old to buy your first book.
This is even worse. This completely does a disservice to the book, but I bought that book purely on the strength that it had a checklist of the vintage action figures, a picture of them in the book, because I didn't have anything. And it was only after then that I was then on the bus back. I bought it from Wonder World Comics in Boscombe, in Dorset, and I was on the bus on the way back, and then I started reading all the other material in there, where it was talking about the production process and all these ideas and alternative things for the movies, then going into the merchandising and all like the background toy designs. You know, you had like sketches of Mark Boudreau's like mini rig, and I was just like, this is absolutely phenomenal. But like the truth is, I bought it originally purely on impulse. It's like, yep, it's got a checklist, that's all I need, you know. And it was only like later on, after being able to sit down and have a read, that I realised that how amazing that book was. So yeah,
it's a stunning book. And like you say, he's been involved in so many great books over the years, and definitely some stories to be told there.
I think so, yeah. I mean, from the point of view of a lot of this stuff is memories. If it's not documented and stuck down, then it's gone. As much as we collect all the toys and stuff like that, it's not going to biodegrade anytime soon. There's tons of it. But for me, a lot of the fun is actually getting the stories behind it all. Some things aren't really what you want to hear because it's throwing a different light or a different opinion on the things that you love. But in some cases, it's good to understand and learn that, because it's like a warts and all. You only get to where you are through that struggle. So
yeah, not just about the stuff, as nice as it is to have. It is about having a good crack, making some memories and having some good stories to tell when you're having a beer with fellow collectors and stuff. I think that's where it's all at, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Solo on video is going great guns. It's selling out everywhere. It's number one in the UK video chart for the second week. Looks like it's going to hold for a third. Doing the same in the States. Why do you think Solo has suddenly clicked on home video when it didn't click at the cinema?
I would say it did click on the cinema. It was just given not the best slot when you got Jurassic Park, Deadpool and Avengers and however other big blockbusters. I don't know if it will necessarily shake the perceived negativity towards it, which is completely unfounded. But I think it's one of those things that people are picking it up because maybe they didn't see it at theatre release, that they go, oh, yeah. And as harsh as it sounds, the price of the thing that you can keep forever is the same price as 2 movie tickets. So people were going into that area as well. But you saying that, because you kept saying the video release, and I'm like thinking, wouldn't that be cool? Not that anybody's going to do it. If they did do a VHS copy of it, would you buy that?
Oh, in a heartbeat. You know I would.
Yeah?
I mean, if they did, tell you how much I would be into that. If they did a Video 2000 VHS Laserdisc Betamax version box set of Solo, I'd buy it. I know I'd never listen to it or play it, but I would buy it in a heartbeat.
Because I've seen a lot of vinyl re-releases for different films and things like that. You can kind of see that, they're re-releasing classic albums and stuff like that on vinyl again. That's still like an accessible technology, as in a record player, you know. A VHS or video cassette, beta or VHS hasn't got that kind of support in hardware anywhere.
No.
But if it was still there, I'd still probably buy it. I've got Chump written across my head.
Oh, me too.
But for me, for Solo, because it has that kind of like backward feel than Force Awakens and Last Jedi, that I would go out of my way to buy that as a VHS release.
Like you say, I think it's the nostalgia element of Solo. It is sort of 10 years before the original Star Wars. Rogue One has it as well, because it bumps up right to the original Star Wars. But Solo really did, and because as kids, the first Marvel comic we read after the original film was a Han Solo adventure, and the first novel that came out after Splinters was the Han Solo trilogy. Kind of tuned, especially older fans, have probably tuned into that era and wanted to know more about Han. And I watched it on the plane coming back from New York with the sound off. I was kind of dozing, and I just had the visuals on. And I tell you what, the film works without the sound, and it really does pull you in a strangest way.
It's Tuesday night. Time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. Welcome to Making Tracks.
Before we wrap up this episode, though, we do have one final interview with Greg Hildebrandt. It's the second part of our chat with Greg. Wonderful artist. Met him at New York Comic Con as well. There's audio from that coming.
I saw.
We were very pleased.
Massively jealous.
Very pleased. And Martin Keeler actually bought the poster that he has repainted, which he's going to talk about in a moment. Martin bought a poster version of the original with small drawings that Greg had added to the poster. So there's all of that to come later episodes.
50p.
50p, exactly 50p.
And a pound of grapes.
So this is the second part of our interview.
I was going to say Adrian Mole reference for anybody out there. But...
Oh, yes. Oh, I love it. Still fancy Pandora. Second part of our interview with Greg Hildebrandt. You and your brother had distinctive style that's recognisable, certainly to Star Wars fans because of our familiarity with that piece. But would you say that use of the darker tones, would you call that like a thumbprint, something unique to you guys?
In a way, I guess in contemporary terms, I mean, come on, Caravaggio was like freaking the master of light and dark, right? The shading, the black shadows, the dark shadows. I don't know. I mean, I'm the last guy in the world to really ask that. You know what I mean? I am, because I'm not aware that I even have a style. I just paint pictures. I mean, I don't know. It comes, you know, as a kid, when you're younger, you're in that conversation, you know, I got to come up with my own style. I have to stand out, you know, and so you're really, Tim and I both, all young artists are, you're absorbing all kinds of stuff. I mean, you're looking at everybody and everything that turns you on, you know, and you're trying to emulate them or imitate them. I mean, I got through my Bernie Fuchs period, you know, the illustrator. He was fantastic in the 60s. He's a King Kong of the 60s. That's expressionistic, but very realistic, drawn in perspective and everything. But he would overpaint and underpainting and all that shit. For years, Gustav Tengram was God, because he was, you know, he styled Snow White and Pinocchio, and those are two of my favorite films from childhood. Yeah. They still are, in fact. Tengram, it was a fantastic children's book illustrator. I had all of his books as a kid. So we'd emulate him for Peter Bruegel. I mean, I was a Bruegel nut. I mean, the Detroit Institute of Arts had a great painting, The Wedding Dancer, and then I discovered him, and then Edward Hopper, and I tried to emulate, then Rene Magritte, you know. So, I mean, you're taking all that stuff in.
Yeah.
Master illustrators, you know, N.C. Wyeth and Howard Pyle and Jesse Wilcox Smith and, you know, Dean Cornwell and on through all the 50s guys, you know. I mean, John Whitcomb, that beautiful, beautiful people stuff that he used to do. I ate all that stuff up, you know, with my eyeballs and then trying to emulate it also. So then you finally get to a point where you say, well, what the hell? I really, at a period, I did a whole series of so-called classics with Jean. She started, and her brother started a publishing company, Unicorn Publishing, and we went through and picked all the books that we loved that were in PD. Yeah. You know, The Wizard of Oz, Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, you know, all kinds of them. And I consciously said to myself, absorbed all these people all my life, and I said, I'm not thinking about any style. I'm anti-style right now. I'm not style. No style. I'm just going to paint. So whatever comes out is your style. Whatever comes out is your style. Yeah, whatever comes out is your style. After that's it right there. Now, I'm not aware that I have one. I just make pictures. I'm not bullshitting. I mean, I really. Oh yeah. I mean, if you see maybe the color and the value in the light, yeah, maybe that's got something to do with it. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure it probably does. I'm not sure. You know. Composition, I've always been a nut on just classical composition, you know, defined by Greeks, the ancient Greeks and all that stuff, the golden rectangle and everything, you know, and the golden spiral. And, you know, you see the death of Socrates, right? Angra, you know, the one we see that pointing up, that masterful, beautiful, formal composition knocks me on my ass. Also, I like the abstract compositions of Degas. You know, the ballerinas and everything. So I don't know. I mean, I still look at it still knocks me out. I get punched in the gut if I see a piece of art by a contemporary artist that really is incredible. And I say, oh, Christ. And it flattens me for a while. And then I get up off the floor and I dust myself off and say, okay, turn the fear into excitement, you know?
Are you still learning? Are you always on the hunt for new
God, I get it. Totally. I mean, there's nothing to get to the point where you think you know it all. What the? That's insane. You know, it's like, especially for an artist, well, you close the book then, close the door, bury yourself, pull the crypt over yourself, you know?
Yeah, you do.
If you're not learning every day, what the hell's the point of it? It's like, oh my God. And it's, you know, the old cliche, it's the more you learn, the more you know that you don't know. Yeah. I mean, the older you get. I mean, like I say, I'm going to be 80 in January, and I'm still trying to figure it out or get it right. Bob McGinnis, the great illustrator, says that. He said, I'm just trying to get something right. And that's the way you kind of feel, you know, when you're doing stuff, whatever right is, you know what I mean? But it's like that.
Hello, Fanthatrax. Fanthatrax, I screwed it up. Hi, Fanthatrax.
There's a question. Have you ever felt like you've 99% nailed the picture, or do you always feel like that's not done yet?
Well, you know, there are certain things, yeah, that I think hit it, you know, like that not hit it, but are more satisfying to me when I look at them now, like I did with Black Sabbath picture that they used for Mob Rules, the album cover, a nightmare that I had, a dream that I was going through a real heavy duty period of my life, breaking away from all kinds of traditional stuff that I was raised with, you know what I'm saying, politics, religion, all that shit, and a intense period, and that came out, and I thought, Christ, I just kind of painted it, and then it was like really spontaneous like that. I mean, it was just like, just came out, whoom. I just did a bunch of rough sketches on it, and I'll never change that. That to me in my mind, that's it. There's nothing about that I would alter, change. There's other things, yeah. Well, there's you look at it's not the main composition. I really work at establishing primary center of interest, secondary, third, fourth, and leading the eye around the composition. You know, I think that I'm pretty good at that, even though I don't walk around talking about myself like that. But that I'm not going to alter that. There may be tangents. You know, this is the thing when you're doing realism, representationalism. You know, it is like 50% of the tangents, the way shit uncomfortably touches with or overlaps, or maybe should have moved a tiny bit to the left or tiny bit to the right. That kind of stuff always, you know, is always there. That'll never go away. But yeah, and there's other ones. There's here and there. There's pictures. I can't remember. I think the Dracula cover. We did Dracula. Jean did Dracula. We went through that. We did Bram Stoker's book, and I decided to go back and break the rule and go back and use black, given the subject matter. But you know, like now, how do you structure that in your palette breakdown? You just don't use it. Oh, I got to get dark. No, I used it as a color in a series of colors, going from warm to cool. Still to my same base. I paint with a cool light, warm shadow, warm light, cool shadow. That's the basic principle right there. If there's a warm light on a subject, the shadow gets cooler. If there's a cool light on a subject, the shadow gets warmer. Now it's then a matter of chroma and color of light. So I use the black as a series in the flow and series and sequence of color.
And that's a constant throughout your work.
Yeah. I can't paint without that. Knowing the color of the light and knowing the color of the shadow. I couldn't start a painting. Then I'm just smudging shit around, you know. I work everything out. I mean, once the subject starts, like I'm looking at my TSO painting right now, there's a big, wide 4-panel painting. It's for the program. Jean designs a program. She goes through about 70,000 photos from last year's show, picks all the performers and long shots. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a big, huge pyrotechnic laser beam, Pink Floyd, beyond Pink Floyd, kind of like thing, Beautiful, magnificent, gloriously designed. I mean, it knocks me on my ass. And in any event, we do this 4-page panel full, and it's like I keep challenging myself with putting myself into a position of what can I do with this in terms of color, light, and composition. Well, I've got about half a dozen light sources in the picture, a warm light and a cool light, and it's the same principle that applies. I could not possibly start this picture without knowing the exact color of all those lights that are in the picture and what's the shadow going to be. Now, the shadow is dioxazine purple for everything because it's the ideal color for my basic principle of warm light, cool shadow, cool light, warm shadow. Because to a warm light, say an orange light or a yellow light, purple is cool. To a blue light, say phthalo blue or ultramarine light source, say those two colors, purple is warm because it's heading to red. So it's the color in the middle for both those. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's the shadow color for cool and it's the shadow color for warm.
So it's the ultimate utility shadow color.
Yep. Simple as that.
Talking of shadows, in '96, you and your brother did the Shadows of the Empire trading card set for Topps.
Yes. Yeah.
What was it like coming back to Star Wars? I mean, it had been a while, so what was it like coming back and diving into that?
I like that segue. Speaking of shadows, the shadow knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men. No, I mean, that was fun. I mean, holy shit. There's this guy that we met, though I wouldn't been able to pull it off, that we met through somebody that was involved in the whole Star Wars universe that had all the costumes. This guy was he was a maniac. He was an art, the ultimate fan. He had all these props and guns and costumes and get-ups. How many stormtroopers outfits he had tons of them. And we got him and we posed models with all of his costumes and props. Or else I wouldn't have been able to do it. You know what I mean? You need all that stuff. And no, that was fun. That was a lot. The thing is, there's a real big, tight deadline on that, too, which Tim and I have always worked towards, worked with. I'm just used to it since I was at this film company. So you're kind of like, ba-da-ba-boom, ba-da-ba-boom, ba-da-ba-boom. You're shooting them out like a machine gun. And there's an exciting thing to that. I mean, stuff happens in painting where you're not overthinking things, but the same principles apply. See, I mean, our principle is there. Tim knew it. We both worked out of that same principle, that same premise, and we both developed that together. I mean, in a sense, we had to develop a system together so that we could know what the palette was. That's why the palette's so neat and structured, because I would use it maybe, and he would take it home and use it. So you needed this thing that both guys were working out of, you see.
I think we've packed in as much information as we possibly can into 45 wonderful minutes. Dave, where can people find you if they would want to do such a thing?
If you want to find me, I have a shop on the edge of the New Forest in Hampshire called All the Cool Stuff. You can come visit the shop anytime, except Sundays. If you can't make it, you can find it on Facebook. It's just literally All the Cool Stuff. Failing that, we also have a show that we run called Farthest From, which is the vintage toy collecting show. Again, on Facebook, it is Farthest From. On Twitter, it's Farthest_From. We've got the next show coming up on the 8th and 9th of December. The 8th is the Fantha Day that we run, and the 9th being the vintage toy show. So again, down in Fordingbridge in Hampshire, but you can reach us there. And also on the Fantha Tracks YouTube page, which is going great guns, where we've talked about a lot of the sort of New York Comic-Con coverage. If you head to the Fantha Tracks YouTube page, you will see a ton of stuff that has been put up from some of the panels, some of the reveals, particularly from like Hasbro that Martin and Matt managed to film. Plus also you get to see the guys give a synopsis and wrap up on each day of all of their activities. So it gives you a really good glimpse at how cool New York Comic-Con was and the sort of stuff that everybody got up to. So you can catch us on there. It's just literally called Fantha Tracks on YouTube. Mark, if I want to track you down and say, how much do you love Nestle Still Life Water? Where am I going with this? Where do I find you?
You can find me on Twitter at prefect_timing. You'll also find me on the Fantha Tracks Twitter handle or Twitter feed. Also, you can email me, mark@fanthatracks.com, which is the best way to get hold of me, or through the Contact Me page on the website. As I say, website's going great guns. All the associative little spindles of stuff that we do are all very, very busy, and we're coming towards a busy time of year. We've got Rancho Gala coming up. We'll talk to Steve. The second part of our interview with Steve will be in the next episode. MCM London Expo is coming up at the end of the month, so that's to come. And as you just mentioned, farthest from, so that's not far away either. The only thing that's missing this year is a Star Wars film at Christmas. Big hole in Christmas. But of course, we've got Mary Poppins Returns, which will just make everything wonderful.
I thought that was a Star Wars movie, isn't it?
Oh, I think Disney think it is.
I was kind of am I confused? Because I thought it was a Star Wars movie.
No, you are very confused, Dave. But I think that Disney were so worried that Star Wars fans would not know which cinema to go into and would of course walk into the one with a spoonful of sugar as opposed to a bucket full of detonators, that they would pull Star Wars.
That has to be the name of the episode. Spoonful of sugar, bucket full of detonators.
There you go. Thank you. There you go. That's what we'll do. So I think that's why they did that. They just kept them all separately, nicely apart. So wonderful marketing, Disney. Thank you very much for making Christmas all about Christmas as opposed to making Christmas all about Star Wars.
But it does come back to my earlier point of that I think that they've forgotten how to market Star Wars. This is sort of a little bit symptomatic of that. It does start with Disney first. They got to get their brains around what it is that they've got and what they're doing, and then feed that out to all the licensing companies, because the licensing companies are the ones that make it bigger than it actually is. High street presence and stuff like that. So no to Mary Poppins, yes to Solo. Let's get out of here.
Dave, have a good week and I will see you next week.
Indeedy do. See you later, guys.